own Christina Parsonevelos is joining me right now on set, along with Kingsview Asset Management CIO Scott Martin. Great to see you both. Scott, what are you looking for out of today?
You know, more of this kind of exploration, I guess, Trish. More of this dialogue that, let's face it, I get the points that were made earlier in the show about, how this is riling up G7 leaders. It's taking a long time. There's a lot of give and take. There's, hey, we're going to tariff this, and oh, yeah, we're going to tariff this back. But you guys got to think about this. I mean, we're undoing at least 8 years of the Obama administration, which was not America first, and I'd argue some of the Bush administration as well, that has basically put America behind. And so I like a lot more of these dialogues. I like a lot more of these press conferences, these visits with the world leaders, President Xi also from China, because these are big economies that, yes, are smaller than the U.S., but they're still growing economies. They're big trade partners. We need to work with them on outcomes that are going to work for both countries. And so more of this dialogue, to me, is a step in the right direction.
Yeah, but now there's the threat of tariffs on Japanese cars.
Right. And I just wanted to add to that point that I think Abe is taking a policy point from Macron, the president of France. He tweeted out today, looking forward to this meeting with President Trump. Abe's never really done that before, and Macron did that before coming to the United States, trying to ease the tides, but it didn't really work in Macron's favor. So it'll be interesting to see if Abe is able to get some positive outcomes with these talks. I know you spoke about this earlier, but military, whether there's going to be a military presence in South Korea, and then automobiles and what that means for the entire sector in the United States. Right now, if you factor out these Japanese cars, that's a huge increase in production that has to happen in the United States. And right now, if you're looking at all of these car makers, a lot of them are working at full capacity. So I'm a little bit hesitant or concerned about, can they take on this extra demand at the moment should there be this massive tariff, or how President Trump has also said that he's looking at any cars that pose a threat to national security. So that too could play a role in the demand and production in the United States. So are we at full capacity? Can we handle it?
How much of this, though, is also just posturing, Scott, in that, if you want leverage negotiation, if you're him, if you're the president, you want to make it such that there's an incentive for them to come to your side of the table, right? So what do? You threaten big tariffs, and you say, unless you lower yours, we're going to put this on all the stuff that's coming in. I mean, it seems to me to be in part posture. Am I right?
I think it is, but I think, Trish, and this is the adjustment the world has to make. Unlike recent years and recent administrations, this is tough talk. It's posturing, to use your word, but it's follow through too. I mean, I think
you have to be willing to, by the way. That's
right.
And there's a danger if you just make these empty threats if you're not willing to follow through. But I do think that this president in particular makes these threats, but is also, even if it meant politically his own challenges, Scott, because no one's going to want to have to pay more for any of their goods, period, right? American consumers won't like that. So it could be politically challenging for him. But if he's going to threaten this, he has to be willing to follow through.
That's true. And I think as far as the world leaders believe, so far, I think they think he will. Now, you're right. That will drive up a ton of costs in the U.S. I mean, tariffs are a cost to the U.S. consumer, certainly. We do still have the great notion, or the great, I guess, distinction of being the world's biggest shopper. So other countries, Christina mentioned it. Very good accent, by the way, Christina.
Yeah, she speaks French.
Bien fait, that was perfect French. I think Europe's learning. They're learning that we mean business. Angela Merkel is, too. So you guys got to realize that while Trump is posturing here, I think he's going to carry through some of these promises or threats that are out there. And I think that's why these countries are willing to finally listen to what some of our demands are.
Right, but at the same time, this has just been going on back and forth. We actually haven't seen a follow-through just yet, and I think that that's where we're going to see markets react. In Q1, you saw a lot of posturing out in the public. That hasn't happened before. When you're talking trade, usually it's behind closed doors, and then eventually when a decision is made, it's made public. Right now, investors, especially in Q1, had to figure out, how are we going to price in this risk? So you saw a lot of volatility. We're seeing that quiet down, which is why this past week, especially today and yesterday, you're seeing tech sector really strong. You're not seeing markets hit that much, despite the fact that we have a huge summit, a world monumental summit on Tuesday. You have Abe in the United States right now. I think that investors have realized, okay, we can't just swing like crazy just yet. We've priced it in for Q1, and now things are going to go calm. They are expecting an outcome, and I think that that's something we have to see, and we haven't seen yet a follow-through, like you mentioned.
Okay, so an outcome, meaning we either lower tariffs all around the world, or we raise them, right? In other words, there's some kind of resolution, and it might be temporary, but there's going to be some cause and effect.
Right, and I think with Abe, it's gonna happen faster. I'm concerned about what's going on with Europe. You're not seeing the same type of concessions with Asia and Japan like you're seeing with Europe. China being an excellent example. The ZTE, if you're following that, so you have a company, ZTE. They had the ban lifted today. Congress, not necessarily a few senators, they're just not necessarily agreeing with the president at the moment. But now ZTE, which is possibly a U.S. national threat, can do business with the United States again. So this is a huge move. This is a sign maybe that the president is trying to show, hey, we can work together through these negotiations.
You know, everyone thinks he's so unreasonable. But as a businessman, I mean, to your point, you know, you hear a lot of rhetoric, right, Scott? But at the end of the day, he actually, you know, he's trying to find a way to still do business with this company. What do you make of that? I mean, because there's a lot of concern about him, shall we say, in his personality. But if you look at the health of the markets, if you look at the health of the economy, if you look at the opportunity, right, that is now ahead, that we might be sitting down with we are sitting down with the North Koreans next week, and there's a chance for denuclearization in a way that, you know, never anybody thought would be on the horizon, at least not this early. And you say, okay, yeah, he may be a strong personality and not everybody's cup of tea, but the policy itself is working.
Something's there, Trish. I mean, the historic tax cuts. I mean, I can't think of a presidential person or figure in history that would have done that ZTE deal. It would have been, you know, it would have been political fire. They would not have gone near it. Trump reached out or threw out that olive branch to the Chinese a few weeks ago. We talked about it on the show a few times. It was obviously hated by the left. But it's obviously a point that the Trump administration is making with the Chinese to say, look, you know, this is something we want to work on because we need your help with NOCO. We need your help with some of these other issues that we have with you guys stealing our technological ideas and so forth. And so when it comes to making those concessions or making those outreaches and working the deal, as you noted, Trish, that's something that we haven't seen before.
So that's very really different. I mean, Christina said earlier, right? Normally, this stuff doesn't get negotiated so publicly. But is it helping them?
And that's what adds the volatility real quick, Christine, like you mentioned. I mean, some of the tech stocks are getting smoked today, believe it or not. They had a massive intraday reversal, but that's just because, you know, the markets are trying to react and parse maybe a little bit too much of what is being said because, you know, some of the stuff is probably too far or too much in the light for some of the markets.
Is that a mistake, Christina? I mean, investors, you know, to look at every tweet, every single headline, I mean, do they have to sort of take this president with a grain of salt and say, let me see how this shakes out?
Yes, of course. And we've seen that reaction from going from Q1 to now. We reacted. We never, ever had this type of public display by a president before. So I'm not an investor. I'm not one of the guys right in the pit. But if you look at their reaction, they've never seen that before. How do they react? So there was a lot of volatility. Going into the summer, you're going to see less volume. So I think that volatility will still remain because of the lack of volume. So one headline can really swing the market in one direction. But to add to tech right now, despite it being hit, we're seeing in the markets a little bit lower today. Tech, there's a few reasons why it's been growing stronger. If interest rates continue to climb, technology is benefiting from that because their raw material costs are lower than, let's say, semiconductors or people that you actually need to build product versus software. You also have a lot of tech companies that are benefiting from the tax cuts. They're bringing their money back to the United States, using it towards buybacks. That's boosting up their share price.
Yeah, I'm okay with the buybacks, though. I mean, I'd prefer that they're investing in capital equipment, et cetera, but buybacks are all part of the system.
And so that's two factors as to why we're seeing the tech sector. And then another one, too, is you call it a growth play. There's a little element of tech in almost every single company now at this point. And then last but not least, if you look at the fundamentals, you're looking at their balance sheets, earnings, revenue, you're seeing a lot of growth, especially within this past quarter. Supposed to see a long-term play with technology. A lot of analysts, and I can be corrected.
So I'm hearing some optimism from you. I just want to be clear. My favorite Canadian who's probably not happy about any of this trade stuff. But you're sounding kind of optimistic.
Guys, if the Canadians are on board, then we're in really good shape here. I mean, that could be market, up another 10%
I don't think
this year.
the Canadians are on board. I'm speaking right now from just, as a business reporter looking at the data, not as a Canadian. If I were to sit here and say, how do I feel about the NAFTA negotiations?
I got to tease you about that.
Yeah,
right?
About the phone call between President Trump and Trudeau. I don't know if I necessarily agree with some of those comments, but that's okay. I'm here as a business journalist, not to preface my opinion on what's going on in Canada.
But nonetheless, your sense of things, I think, is in line with my sense of things and Scott's sense of things, that things are kind of good right now. I mean, earnings are good, right? Fundamentals are good. And so you're setting the stage for what could be a wonderful opportunity for our markets and for consumers and for jobs. That said, this is a president, Christina, who's swinging for the fences, right? Like, he's taking some chances. And so it could go extraordinarily well, or it could go really bad, right? I mean, and so that's what the market's needing to decide right now.
Exactly.
And they're, in some ways, perhaps putting off that decision because we still see this solid run-up. There's the president right now, and Shinzo Abe coming out. He's going to speak to reporters. They've been speaking. A lot on the line right now.